Coming to paperback and e-readers everywhere, E-Steamed Horror of the Hyena Woman. Hell's aspiring angel takes on a wicked werewoman in this action-packed, all-new E-Steamed series adventure. Pre-order your copy of E-Steamed Horror of the Hyena Woman on Amazon.com today. Billionaire Elon Musk is waging a campaign to buy the social media website Twitter. Now, your Elon Musk in the last couple of weeks has purchased 9% of the Twitter website stock, and he has also made an offer to buy the website outright for $43 billion. Now, the owners of Twitter have been pushing back, saying that your Elon Musk is not the person they want to purchase the website. However, your Elon Musk says he wants to buy the website because he wants to preserve free speech. Now, according to Elon Musk, Twitter represents a virtual town square for the United States, and he believes that he needs to preserve free speech online because people are not being allowed an opportunity to be able to present their side of the argument on these online platforms. Now, I myself have noticed how the internet has changed over the last couple of years, and I can understand Elon Musk's concerns about censorship on the internet. Now, I first saw censorship on the internet back in 2009 to 2010 during what some call the YouTube gender wars, where many black men who were trying to present their points for the first time on a social media platform had many of their channels flagged and deleted by bitter black females who could not stand hearing the viewpoints of black men for the first time, because over the last 40 years, black women were allowed to control the narrative on media platforms in the mainstream, and as TV shows presented us negative images of black men on these shows like the Oprah Winfrey Show and the TV news, we never got to hear the side of black men. But when social media came along like YouTube, black men were finally allowed an opportunity to present their side of the story, and what happened was that you had a group of black females and their supporters who wanted to go out here and silence the voices of those black men. Thankfully, because a group of black men filed a class action lawsuit, we started to see an end to what they called false flagging. Unfortunately, the gremlins of censorship went from the black sector of YouTube into the mainstream. And as America has fallen into what many call the culture wars, we have seen many who are a part of groups that represent identity politics look to try to control the narratives on social media, and they have taken to platforms like your Twitter and Facebook to make these platforms only present the narratives they feel comfortable with and look to censor anybody who presents a counterpoint. This has led to many what they are called conservatives to feel like they are being censored on these platforms, because many of these individuals wind up either getting banned or they wind up getting their accounts blocked. And this kind of censorship really runs counter to our United States Constitution, because our United States Constitution guarantees everyone free speech, but your social media platforms, they oftentimes use the whole argument that they are private companies as a way to prevent people from expressing their viewpoints. And this whole policy has been abused for many years on social media platforms, where these companies say that they're private companies, and they go out here and use this as a reason to go out here and censor anyone who they believe they disagree with. And this, again, runs counter to what these companies agreed to with our federal government under Section 230. Under Section 230, these companies say that they are not publishers, but they are creating platforms. Unfortunately, it seems like they only create platforms for those who they agree with. And again, this runs counter to our United States Constitution, and it runs counter to the whole concept of free speech that the founding fathers established under the United States Constitution. And what your Elon Musk is proposing is to go out here and buy Twitter, because he wants to go out here and restore the whole concept of free speech so that we can have a free and open internet like it was during the late 90s and the early to mid 2000s. Now, as someone who was on the internet during the dial-up days of the 90s and the early 2000s, I can tell you that the internet was a completely different place. And it was a place where people could go out here and express themselves freely, and they could present their viewpoints and talking points without any sort of censorship from any sort of provider. If you wanted to go out here and present a website which presented your viewpoints, you could do so on any of these of your own websites, or you could go on platforms like your Angel Fire or your GeoCities, and you could go out here and present those viewpoints without any sort of groups going out here and censoring you, just as long as you made sure everything was legal. So that was the way the internet used to be. And whenever people would go on a website where they saw content that they disagreed with, all they did was go out here and click on the right hand side of the Macintosh or the left hand side of the PC, and they kept it moving. And when you went to message boards like Wizard World back in 2001 or Superhero Hype back in 2004 or 2005, I used to go there all the time. What happened was, if you saw a topic in a thread you disagreed with, what you would do is you would just keep scrolling down, or you would just click out and keep it moving. That's the way the internet used to be back in the late 90s and early 2000s. But when social media came along, we started to see a lot of people having real issues with people having differences of opinion. And what happened is that many of these social media sites started creating community guidelines to try to go out here to police their websites to deal with things like trolls and stalkers. Unfortunately, the policing of these websites has gotten so excessive that it's turning into censorship, because in the early days of YouTube, it was originally considered a place where you could broadcast yourself, and there were no guidelines whatsoever. But as black men started coming on and other people started presenting their viewpoints, that's when we got this flagging system on YouTube, and that's where we got other censoring platforms on places like Twitter. Now, this whole issue of censoring got even worse as America became more and more polarized as related to politics, and as people started bringing their political views to social media like Twitter and Facebook and YouTube. That's when the censoring started to become even worse, because I remember around 2015 starting to see heavy censorship as related to the culture war, because we were starting to get ready for the 2016 presidential election. And as America started to have this 2016 presidential election between your Hillary Clinton and your Donald Trump, that's when people wanted to go out here and start looking to censor people on social media. And they wanted to censor people because they had opposing viewpoints. And this censorship got even worse once Donald Trump won the election. And many speculated that because of social media, Donald Trump wound up winning the election, because he was able to rally voters to go out here and vote and use social media as a tool. And ever since then, there's been an effort to try to control social media and try to control the content on social media to ensure that people don't express their views, especially those that are seeming to be more and more conservative. So there is a problem with social media these days, and I've been seeing it for years, but your Elon Musk also sees it, and he wants to try to restore some sort of free speech on these platforms, because the internet in and of itself is a fluid thing, and the whole thing is it's a platform where everybody should be able to express themselves, and everybody should be able to present their viewpoints without somebody getting so emotional that they want to go out here and censor another individual for expressing themselves on an open platform. The whole thing with open platforms is that anyone should be able to say whatever they want, and then after they say what they want, you as an American or across the globe have a right to go out here and just click out of that page and click out of that site. And once you click out of that page and click out of that site, you have expressed your opinion. You don't have a right to go out here and censor people for disagreeing with you, because in the real world, people have to deal with differing opinions. People have to deal with differing viewpoints. And yes, some of these viewpoints aren't really, as people would say, morally light, like being a racist or a white supremacist. These people are, again, they, as I see it, are extremely reprehensible, but they need to have their right, because free speech is not about protecting the speech you like. No, free speech is about protecting the speech you don't like. And you definitely need a counterpoint on many of these social media platforms, because counterpoints give us a diversity of thought, and they also give us a perspective on things, so we can get a better understanding of what people think. When you silence people for expressing their thoughts, what you're doing is silencing the counterpoint. And when you silence the counterpoint, you are putting a country in danger, because only fascists and those who want to go out here and suppress other people, these are the people who want to silence other people on social media, because all they want to do is create echo chambers where they hear the points they want to hear, and an echo chamber is a dangerous place to be. And because all of these echo chambers are one of the reasons why we're having so much violent crime, like these mass shooters and others who participate in violent acts. Many of these people get into virtual echo chambers, and once they enter the virtual echo chamber where they're told what they want to hear, they never understand that there are consequences for their actions, and they never understand that there's a world of people outside of their viewpoint. So we really do need to restore the internet back to its 90s, early 2000s state, because the 90s, 2000s internet was a information superhighway, and the whole thing was, if you saw information you did not like, you could always click out of that information and you could move on. And in the case of a social media site like a Twitter, you could go out here and just keep it scrolling, because your time was too precious to waste to sit here and argue with another individual. But social media today has become so polarized that we cannot get an open discourse on the internet anymore. And your sites with this banning and flagging and other forms of censorship, this is not encouraging people to express themselves and have a discourse. No, this type of censorship, all it does is drive people to become more and more polarized, and all this type of polarization does is divide a country even further, because when people cannot understand that they need to listen to the other side, what this does is make it where people start to become more and more extremist. So I understand why Elon Musk is looking to buy Twitter, because we need to restore these public platforms that are out here, and we need to restore them so that they can become the open platforms they are. Because when you create an open platform like a blogger or a YouTube or a Twitter, again, everyone has a right to express themselves, and if they don't have a right to express themselves, then basically they are a publisher like I am, SJS Direct, where I go out here and publish only African American books. And again, if you're a publisher, you're creating content as related to your opinion. But if you're a platform, you have to give everybody an opportunity to express themselves. And if they are getting attention and becoming popular, then that's just how things go. Maybe we need to examine why this person's message is resonating, and maybe that message is resonating because nobody is listening to we the people, but silencing we the people does not make it that person's message stop. And that is the thing that many in social media don't understand, is that yet because the internet is fluid, all you're doing is taking all of this information from one place and making it migrate to another. So your Elon Musk buying Twitter is a good thing as I see it right now, if he's going to do what he says he's going to do and restore the open platform. Because as I've seen your social media, it has just become polarized, and it should not be polarized either to the left or to the right. It needs to remain in the center, and it needs to become a center for discourse, because in the information superhighway, you need spaces where people can hear other people can see other people can disagree with other people, and people can gain perspective on things that give them a better understanding. For example, I remember back in 2019 when I presented a series of videos to refute what they called the passport narrative, where black men were thinking that they could go out here and get foreign women and they would be better than black women. At the first, I dealt with a lot of anger and resistance and people trying to cancel me, to the point where they didn't even want to support things like my Patreon, and they were also attacking me. But over the course of 2 to 3 years, the narrative has changed, and many of those men now have a different perspective on that whole passport narrative and foreign women being better than black women. And now we're seeing that the narrative is now people understanding that it is not about the race of the woman, it is about the content of the character. And if you don't get yourself right mentally, you will wind up going from one group of female predators in your own community to another group of female predators in another community. And again, people were angry about that whole discourse in the beginning, but the whole point was, over time, people began to see perspective on things and gain understanding. And that's what an open platform does. It makes it where people have to start thinking about themselves, thinking about their place in the world, thinking from a broader perspective. And that's something we really need to get back to what the internet was. Because I remember in the 90s and the 2000s, when the internet was open, people got to see different perspectives. People got to see different viewpoints. People got to see differences of opinion. And since there was nobody there to regulate their opinions, what happened was people learned how to self-regulate, and they learned how to go out here and click out of content they disagreed with. And once they learned how to click out, that taught them the discipline and resolve to be able to navigate through their emotions regarding whatever content they saw. And we need to restore that whole navigating through your emotions as related to content, because if you cannot control yourself as related to what you see online, then you have a problem. Because if everything upsets you that you see online, you're going to be a very sad person out here. As a person who's been on the internet for over 20 years, I've seen a lot of different content. I've seen Satanists, I've seen all sorts of stuff. And what I would do is, if I disagreed with that content, I would just click out and keep it moving. Again, I didn't want to censor the square at all, but I would just click out of that content and keep it moving. Now, there is some content I say that really does need to be censored, like child pornography or anything that exploits children, but everything else needs to be left up on these platforms and let we the people decide what we're going to watch and what we're not going to watch. Because if we go out here and talk about democracy, the greatest way you can preserve democracy is preserving these platforms to remain open. And if Elon Musk wants to do that with Twitter, then I really applaud him, because Twitter really needs to get back to what it was. Because I remember in 2009, it wasn't as polarized as it is today. And I remember back in 2009, your Twitter basically being an open platform where people again had went out here and talked and had their discourses, and people just dealt with life. But we're not getting that right now because many of what they call SJWs have hijacked Twitter, and they've turned it into a place where people cancel people, create cancel culture mobs, and silence people, and that runs counter to everything that is in our United States Constitution. If we really want to see Twitter restored, we really do need new ownership, and we need ownership that understands the concept of free speech, and we need ownership that understands that every American has a right to express themselves, because America shouldn't be a place where cancel culture should be the social norm. No, we should be pushing back against those who would push cancel culture and push back against those who would go out here and look to censor other people. So when I look at Elon Musk and his plans to buy Twitter, I'm hoping that he does go out here and buy it, because if he goes out here and buys it and restores the discourse, then we can get further towards restoring the internet back to what it used to be in the golden age of the 90s and the early 2000s. Now, if you want to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. And if you want to pick up some of my books on the SJS Direct imprint, like the ISIS series, the E-Steam series, the John Haynes series, and the books of the Spinsterella trilogy, you can find those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find them on Smashwords, the iBook Store, and Google Play. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.
Now available in paperback and e-readers, ISIS Legacy. The sorority secrets of the goddess next door are revealed in this all-new ISIS series adventure. Get ISIS Legacy in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere.